Thank you all for joining. Okay. Once again, good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's session entitled Building, Training, and Consuming Machine Learning Models Using Azure and Power BI. This session is a part of our webinar series, Demystifying the Microsoft Cloud here at Bennett Adelson. My name is James Shropshire. I'm a principal consultant in the areas of data and AI. And Bennett Adelson is a consulting firm located in Cleveland, Ohio, that has been servicing customers for over 23 years now. We have 8 practice disciplines, and I'll show you here on this slide. And then we also have focus areas in Azure, modern workplace, custom app development, security and infrastructure, Microsoft Dynamics, and of course, data and AI. So that's a lot about me. I want to learn a little bit about who's out there in the crowd. So what I'd like to do is find out about the industries you guys are servicing, and I'll start off with a couple polls here. And by all means, if you guys have any problems hearing, please ping me. The chat session is open as well. Okay, the poll is now open. Okay, great response there. All right. I'll keep it open for a few more seconds. I see individuals are still filling out the poll. A couple more individuals, okay. All right, and I'm going to close the poll now. Just so you guys out there, oh, actually, all right, I'll hold on. There's still some feedback. All right, I'll close it out now and let you guys see. So it looks like the majority is coming from the manufacturing group. So let me show you. You should be able to see the results now. Okay. Some consultants out there as well, and finance as well. Okay, and one more poll. I just want to find out as well, what are the roles that are represented out there? All right. Okay. We got some data scientists out there as well. Great. Some developers, lots of developers. All right. I'll keep this poll open for a few more seconds, and then we'll keep moving on. And thank you all for your participation. I really appreciate it. I'm going to close the poll now and then just share the results. So it looks like the majority of our group is in the development space. We have a few data scientists and some executive leaders. So once again, thank you all for joining. I appreciate your time. And let's move on with the presentation. So definitely based on the responses that I'm seeing, this will definitely be a relevant session for all of you. The first thing I want to get into is why are we having this conversation? So because of the deluge and the large amounts of data that are in enterprises these days, that brings us to the reason why machine learning is of very much value and necessary at this point in time. So even as far back as 2016, there was information regarding the large amounts of data that we had, I believe in 2014. So between 2014 and 2016, 90% of the world's data had been generated. And we're continuing on that trend with, of course, large amounts of data. In 2005, I believe there was about 4,500 exabytes of data, as you see on this slide. And as we move closer to 2020, we're looking at over 450,000 exabytes of data. 45,000 exabytes of data. So really, just to put that in context, that's roughly 450 billion terabytes. So that's a lot of data, basically. So the problem or the concern is, how do we leverage this data? That's the question at hand right now. And I want to say that right now we actually have the capability to do that with the technology that has been put in place and being able to leverage that. And just to take a step back, the issue is, on average, between 60 to 73% of enterprises, they aren't even using the data, or they're missing out on the data that's available, or it's unused at this point, which is a problem. So the question becomes, how do we start to overcome these issues? And right now, I see it as a three-legged stool, where three different opportunities we have in order to actually start to put a dent, or actually start to leverage this data. And first and foremost is the affordable storage. So year over year, the cost of storage has gone down, as you all know. And I see that as the first leg of being able to tackle this data deluge. The second leg of that is the ability to leverage cloud technologies. So we have things like Azure SQL Data Warehouse, virtual clusters, data lakes, stream analytics, and analysis services. All of these technologies and features are in the cloud right now. And what that does for us is it just lowers the cost of ownership and allows businesses to scale faster. So whether you're large or small, when you leverage the cloud, you can scale a lot faster. And then the third leg of that, of course, and this is what we're here to talk about and discuss today, is machine learning. So I feel like with the advancement of machine learning and being able to train models and being able to use the technology and hardware that is available to us, we are able to get more insight out of these large amounts of data. So let's discuss this a little bit, and I want to throw up a few definitions on the screen. So artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science dealing with simulation of intelligent behavior in computers. That's according to Webster. So this is the deal breaker for us, or this is what allows us to start actually leveraging these large amounts of data. And then specifically for us, when we talk about training data and looking at models, we're really talking machine learning. Machine learning was actually coined by author Samuel back in 1959. And according to Samuel, machine learning is the subfield of computer science that gives computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. So in our case, we're taking this data and we're making decisions, we're making inferences and predictions with this data. So this is the game changer for us during this time. And so I want to take one more poll, or actually two more sets of polls. I want to find out how many of you are already leveraging these capabilities in your enterprises. So, all right. And the poll is now open. Okay. I'll give it a couple seconds here. And thank you all for responding. I really appreciate you interacting with us. All right, still some answers coming in. All right, I'm going to close it out. It looks like roughly over 50% of the group has chimed in. So I'll close the poll and actually share the results. And it looks like a lot of you are already leveraging or using predictive analytics. And let's see, one more poll here. What I like to do now is just kind of find out what tools you're using. Are you using any of the Microsoft tools right now for your machine learning? Are you using raw R and Python? Okay. Seeing some R programmers out there, some Python, and some machine learning. Microsoft machine learning, great. Okay. and almost half the group right now, you haven't started using any of these capabilities yet, which is good. This is a good time to jump in and start understanding these technologies and what they can do for your organization. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now and share the results so you guys can see. Got a little over half the group responded. I appreciate that. And let's continue on. And so now what I like to do, and it was evident in the responses regarding my next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the tools and technologies that are currently used in order to leverage machine learning. So I did see that there were few data scientists out there, and generally, if you are familiar with data science at all or machine learning, then you're well versed in either R or Python right now. These are the leading languages for actually leveraging statistical information. R is the successor to a programming language called M, and if you come from a statistical background, it's likely that you'll either have an affinity to R or you're already using R for your machine learning and your statistical packages. There's also Python. Python, at least relative to R, is a more general programming language. So if you come from a software development background, it's likely that you're using Python, or you may have an affinity to Python, but both of these are great languages and packages to learn in order to do statistical modeling over data. Okay, and then that brings me to Azure Machine Learning Studio. So Microsoft introduced Azure Machine Learning Studio back in 2014, and it's a GUI-based integrated development environment for constructing and operationalizing machine learning workflow in Azure. So for those who haven't really developed the R or Python muscles, Azure Machine Learning Studio is a good place for you to come in and learn how to create these packages and understand how they can interact with your data. For those seasoned R programmers and Python programmers, you can also import your existing packages and actually extend them in Azure Machine Learning Studio. So let's go here. There are many pre-built machine learning models already baked into Azure Machine Learning Studio, and we'll see that during the demo. I'll show you a lot of those and how you can leverage those and really get a quick start on your machine learning journey. Before we jump into the actual demo, what I like to do is talk a little bit about some companies and some success stories on how people are leveraging Microsoft AI. So across a wide range of industries and segments, people are getting insight out of their data quicker, more accurate, and just overall better experience with their data using and leveraging these tools. So for instance, there's Honeywell, and they're leveraging machine learning to predict and head off device failures. There's Schneider Electric, and their global power management and industrial automation company. They're leveraging Azure machine learning to predict capabilities and minimize costs by measuring the efficiency of their rod pumps. Okay, and then there's Complex Networks, and they're improving their visitor engagement by leveraging machine learning extracts to automate recommendations. So I'm sure you guys have seen that type of capability if you're into movies and other forms of media. And lastly, there's Rockwell, and they're using Microsoft Cognitive Services to power their bot, Shelby, that helps other manufacturing companies measure the health of their assets. And two more interesting cases that I like to highlight. So on this next screen here, that's a Rolls-Royce. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. Believe it or not, I saw one on the road just last week, which is a beautiful car. And so many of you are probably familiar with the Ghost. That's what that particular vehicle is called. But many of you may not be privy to the fact that Rolls-Royce has 13,000 aircraft engines that it services. And of course, it's using machine learning in order to improve their customer service. So just another example where machine learning is being leveraged in order to improve business and improve business interaction. And then my final success story is Zion, China. And Zion, China is a mobile internet healthcare company. And what they've done is they've used Microsoft machine learning in order to improve the lives of patients with chronic diseases like diabetes and things of that sort. And they had a small set of goals and things that they wanted to achieve. They wanted to design a smart, fast, cost-effective way to continuously feed data. They wanted to optimize their analytics suite, and they wanted to get more insight quicker and easier. And what I want to do right now is show you the architecture that they came up with. And as you see, as you look to the far right, once again, we're seeing cloud technologies, we're seeing machine learning technologies, and of course, in this particular case, the presentation layer is Power BI. And what I like to do at this point is just kind of give you a little bit of background before we jump into the demos about machine learning models, talk a little bit about the different types of machine learning models and where and how you would use them in your practice or in your machine learning journey. So first and foremost is classification. So classification deals with categorical data. So understanding in a binary sense, yes or no, approved, not approved, those are examples of classification models. So what I just mentioned was a binary, mean yes or no, but then there's also multi-class classifications. And examples of those would be if an email is spam or non-spam, is it priority, is it promotional, being able to take a look at any of those types of classes or categories. Next would be regression analysis. Regression analysis is another machine learning model that can be used to predict values. So when we think of regression, we think more of continuous information over timelines, over dates, ages, and things of that sort. Examples would include, but are not limited to, estimating product demand, predicting sales figures, analyzing market returns, and predicting the future sale of products. Next, the next model is clustering or cluster analysis. So if you've heard of, and this is pretty much a crash course, I will say, in data science. So if you don't understand all these terms, that's okay, but I just want to give you guys a rough idea of machine learning models. But clustering is, if you've ever heard of unsupervised learning. And so what that is it's not as structured, and you don't have a lot of labels and identification for the data, but the machine or the device is given the role to group these groups of information. So examples of that would be customer segmentation, predicting customer taste, and determining market price, or trying to provide a good idea for a market price. So those are examples of clustering or cluster analysis. And then lastly, but of course not least, is anomaly detection. And this is one that's probably near and dear to all of our hearts. When we think about credit risk, when we think about bank fraud, things of that nature, that's where you'll use anomaly detection. Also in the manufacturing industry, if you have bad equipment, if there are skips in the conveyor belt, anything that's going to lead to an eventual failure, anomaly detection will help you to determine that. So that's just another model that's used within machine learning. So what I like to do next is, and you guys, this slide may be a little cramped, but what this is an overview of the Machine Learning Studio. I'll make sure that I can provide this or provide a link for you guys for this. But what I wanted to do before we jump into the demo is just kind of walk through from an overview perspective of what you should expect to see in Azure Machine Learning Studio. So you have the capability to go after data sources. Next, you would prep that data. So if you need to take any columns out, or if you need to make it's similar to if any of you work with SSIS or any other ETL packages, you have the ability to clean and standardize your data within the data preparation tools in there. And then next, which is the main piece or the main feature that we're interested in, is the training. So training and scoring of models. And then also you have the ability to visualize that information that you've curated at that point. So within the tool, you can do all of these cool things. And so being able to create diagrams, visualization, some of us will probably perform those activities in Power BI, but if you so desire, you can do those activities within Azure Machine Learning Studio as well. And just another treat to thank you guys for attending. I want to show you a cheat sheet here. And for those aspiring data scientists or people who are just getting their feet wet in this area, there's a cheat sheet that Microsoft provides as well. So as you start your machine learning journey, you can always go here. You may not know which modules to use. You may not know which direction that you want to go, but with this sheet, it'll allow you to do it directionally. It'll just give you an idea of which modules within Azure Machine Learning Studio that you want to use, or even not in Azure Machine Learning Studio. If you're looking at an experiment where you want to predict categories, then you would go to the two-class classification. If you want to do clustering, then you'll go to the clustering. And basically, depending on what type of analysis or predictions you're expecting, this sheet will just give you some guidance. It's definitely not, you have to do it this way, but it just gives you directionally some ideas on what you should do. Okay. So with that, I want to jump into a demo. I have two demos for you guys today, guys and gals. And the first demo, we're going to walk through Azure Machine Learning Studio and then show you how to consume those web services within Power BI. And then the next demo, we're just going to take a look at cognitive services within Power BI service. So, all right. So in a few seconds, you should see my screen. All right, there we go. And right now what I'm doing is just logging actually into Azure Machine Learning Studio. And you can access this through your Azure portal. And Alicia, I just want to confirm that you can see my screen and see the demo at this point. If you can just confirm.
Yes, we can see it, James.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so what I've done here is just use a standard commonly used data set here for this specific experiment. And the first step in Azure Machine Learning Studio is we go after the data, which we talked about, and then the next step is to actually train the data. And when we say train the data, what we're referring to is the process of analyzing the input. So that's the data, the incoming data, and what we're looking for are patterns. During that first data set, we're looking for patterns that we want to predict as future data comes in. So that's, in a nutshell, what we mean by training. And the steps here, like you see here, we bring in the data, and then we have select columns in the data set. And so on the left-hand side is where you'll actually leverage the various modules that are available. So in this case, this is the data transformation, and then you have the manipulate column, and then this is where we actually brought this in. So it's just straight drag and drop. So it's really easy to get a head start on creating and training these models. So I've gone ahead and created this model for us for our sample, and then in this particular case, we're using the Titanic information. One, because it's a smaller data set, so I want you guys to be able to run these tests on your own as well. But number two, we're able to really get validity from the outcome of this data because we already know what truly happened there. And in this particular experiment, what we're looking at is age, sex, and the class of the passengers in order to determine who would actually be a survivor on the Titanic. And so we split the data, and we split the data between trained and then the score module, and then also we use what's called a two-class decision forest. And what that is it's just it helps us decide. Earlier we talked about binary, yes, no. The two-class decision model is just a way for us to score the data and put it in the appropriate buckets so that we can determine from a binary perspective a yes or no. So survive, yes, not survive, no. Once we've trained the information and trained the model, and also I want to show you guys something else real quick. This is where we keep our data sets right here. So we can just go in and you can always create a new data set. You can bring it from your file. You can bring it from other modules, other environments. But that's how we actually bring the data into Azure Machine Learning Studio. And then if for you Python aficionados, there's also notebook areas where you can bring books and things of that sort. So just want you to take a look and see the capabilities that you have within Azure Machine Learning Studio. So at this point, we've trained the information, and then we can make predictions based on that information and score it. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll actually deploy the web service. Once the web service is deployed, we can use tools like R to consume that information. And so I'm going to show you all how to do that as well. And I'll bring up Power BI. So this is where we would input the R script in order to leverage the web service that we've just created. Okay. And I also have you know, and I can help any with this, but what you want to make sure is that your R installation is configured properly, and I'll provide links for downloading and installing R as well. But if you want to walk through this specific demo, what will happen is you may run into issues if you don't have your R set up properly. And I'll show you that very briefly. So you go here, options, and R scripting. This is where you'll configure your installation of R. So you'll install R, and then you'll configure it to work with Power BI. Along with that, in order to actually leverage Azure Machine Learning module, you'll need to also add that package to your R environment. So I'll give you a quick tour on that as well. All you'll do here is just you'll go packages, install packages, and then you'll pick your closest time stamp to you, and then you'll be given the option to go down here and find Azure ML, which is right here, and then you'll install it, and then you'll load it as well. And to load, you'll go through the same steps pretty much. Here, just load package, and then there's Azure Machine Learning right there. And this just gives you the ability to use that package, to use that module. Okay. So now let's take a look at the output, the actual output that we created. So if you look at the female on the boat, it looks like for females it was a 72% chance of survival. For the males, it was lower at 17.23%. And then we take a look at the same type of statistics using the various classes. And so all of this data is looking at the output from our machine learning packages. All right. So what I'd like to do now is jump right into our second demo, and this one is around Power BI cognitive. If I'm not sure, and by show of hands, you guys, how many of you were able to attend Microsoft's Business Application Summit a couple weeks ago? But if you were in attendance there, what you quickly are learning is that these cognitive services and these capabilities, Microsoft is fully behind them and currently making advancements and moving toward these. And for instance, for Power BI service, this is where you can leverage the cognitive services capabilities, but that'll also become in the Power BI desktop very soon. So just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. And then without further ado, let's jump in here. And what you'll notice is the cornerstone, I would say, of the cognitive capabilities within Power BI are the data flows. So are you familiar with Power Query? Data flows is analogous to Power Query within Power BI. It's where you'll go to curate the data. It's where you'll go to manipulate the data and make any adjustments if you need to take columns out, if you need to adjust data types. All of that occurs in the data flow component. Also, the data flow component allows us to actually engage or take advantage of the cognitive services within Power BI. And just a note, and you guys are probably getting this, but anywhere you see this brain, that's just letting you know that you have the ability to leverage cognitive services or any type of machine learning capability. And what you'll see here is that my Azure Machine Learning experiments are exposed to Power BI as well. So what I would like to do now is just show you how simple it is to do this. So if you come here, if we take a look at our query that we've developed in Dataflow, and this information, I'm sorry, let me take a step back, is about retail for online shoppers. And what I have is a list of various columns and column types and what cognitive services will do. So right now, here's a true false. If you click next, what it'll do is take a look and actually recommend the type of analysis or the types of predictions that will be available for that type of data. So you notice that I picked a yes, no, or a binary classification type of information, and the the tool, Power BI Cognitive Services, it actually recommends, hey, this is the type of model that you should use. So if we go back, let's pick another one. And let's just go bounce rates. And this will give us regression. It understands that this is a continuous, or this is values that it's looking at, so it's going to try to predict based on regression. And we have the ability to override that and provide different models, but it's going to give you a recommendation when you do that. Okay, let's cancel that. And now I want to show you some of the output of this information. So the biggest piece that, or the most important, is the key influencers here. And so the key influencers, they help us visualize the factors that actually drive a metric. So it helps us understand the interest, and perhaps, you know, an example would be if you want to take a look at employee turnover and understand what may have had an influence on their contract length or another factor, age and things of that sort. The key influencers is where you'll actually dig into that and get more insight into the information. You'll use that when you want to factor in and affect the metric being analyzed. Okay. The other good thing about this output, and this is where I see it as useful, is if you get the data scientists and the business analysts in the same room, and you're training models over time, and hopefully you're doing it in an iterative fashion, and you want those two to be on the same page and be able to track if your models are improving over time. So when we talk about accuracy, how close was the model to the actual forecast? And over time, if you're running these models iteratively, are you getting closer to accuracy, or are you getting further away? And if you're getting further away, the data scientists and the business analysts can take note of that and make the appropriate pivots or make appropriate changes. Okay. And then for the developers out there, as always, you can take all of this information, or the pertinent information that you need, and then you can actually create dashboards with that information by pinning them. And so here's one that I like to use, where you have the accuracy, the selectivity, everything right at your fingertips. So once again, this would be a tool that I would see very useful for the developer, business analyst, and the data scientist to sit down, and as you're cranking these reports out and as you're enriching the information for the business, you can also be cognizant of your precision and accuracy. So I think that's, to me, that's a place where Microsoft has really done well to be able to bring these capabilities to tangible usage and bring them to production in a way that they can actually not only be useful to the business, but then also enriched and improved upon iteratively over time. Jump back here. And then this is where you'll keep all your entities. So any queries that you want to bring in, any table structures that you want to bring in, you'll bring those into entities, and then you can start to act on those with your machine learning models. So you have everything in a one-stop shop. So this is all in the cloud. This is all on Power BI Premium, Power BI Service in this particular case. And you have the capability to leverage all of that information. You can determine how much compute power that you need in order to leverage these models. And like I mentioned earlier, the convenience and the ability to get a pretty quick start on these is at your fingertips. So with that, I'm going to jump back into the presentation here. All right. And I just want to focus on a few takeaways. So I mentioned earlier, to me, just being able to work harmoniously with the various stakeholders, with your developers, with your data scientists, with your business analysts, being able to leverage these tools and understanding the entry points for all of these tools, and then also understanding how to release these tools into your production environment so that your business can make good decisions, I think is paramount during this time. So we discussed the large amounts of data. We've discussed how to actually wrangle and take advantage of that data using Azure Machine Learning Studio, using cognitive services, and you're able to take a look. So I just encourage you to start training your data, start taking advantage of these tools early and often. Thank you all once again for joining. I provided some links for you to go and actually test these things and take a test drive. And then if you want to reach out or contact us, here's our information. And at this point, what I'll do is I'll open the floor for questions that you may have. And thank you once again for joining us.